Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Aaron Porras, here with ILTV's Morning Briefing. Israeli security officials have today announced that 3 Israeli Arabs from the northern city of Al-Fahim have been charged with planning to commit a shooting attack at Jerusalem's Holy Temple Mount compound. The 3 have been identified as Saeed Gassoub Mahmoud Jabarin, Farez Salah Mahmoud, and a 16-year-old whose name has not been cleared for publication. Shin Bet officials say the 3 began visiting websites and media pages linked to ISIS and hope to join Islamic State fighters in Syria. The news comes after 3 terrorists, also from the city of Al-Fahim, shot and killed 2 Israeli policemen near the Lions Gate in Jerusalem's Old City in July. The terrorist attack sparked massive clashes between Arab worshippers and Israeli security personnel when Israel announced they would be putting up metal detectors at the entrance of the Temple Mount compound. The 2-week protest led to serious tensions between Israel and the Palestinians, but was eventually resolved when Israel decided to remove security barriers, including the controversial metal detectors. Shin Bet officials say the 3 suspects began planning for the terrorist attack shortly after the July shooting and were already in possession of the weapons needed for the attack. Since the rise of ISIS, Israel estimates that dozens of Israeli Arabs have joined the Islamic State. Several of Israel's top political leaders gathered in the Gush Etzion bloc yesterday to celebrate 50 years since Israel began constructing settlements. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was joined by ministers from his cabinet and Israel's Knesset Speaker Yuli Edelstein. Neither leaders of Israel's opposition parties nor a member from the Israeli High Court, however, were in attendance. Prime Minister Netanyahu declared that settlements will not be uprooted, saying, quote, "Settlement is important to you in the same way that it's important to me, so I say very clearly there will be no further uprooting of settlements in the land of Israel," end quote. Netanyahu went on to say that one of the main reasons why Israel will not evacuate settlements in the West Bank is because Israel fears the West Bank will become like Gaza, saying, quote, "We did not get peace when we uprooted settlements, we got terror and missiles, and we will not do that again," end quote. Meanwhile, a senior Trump official has reportedly told Prime Minister Netanyahu that although the United States does support Israel building settlements, they don't want Israel to build excessively. They said, quote, "You can be a pig, but don't be a chazel," meaning gluttonous. Reports suggest that Netanyahu relayed the message to settlement leaders, who in return explained to Netanyahu that they would like settlement building to increase and are waiting on approval for 10,000 new housing units. Sparks were flying at this week's United Nations Human Rights Council as accusations and threats against Israel flew unashamedly across the plenum floor, defended against only by Mossab Hassan Yousef, the so-called son of Hamas. First, United Nations Human Rights Commissioner Zeid Ra'ad al-Hussein sent warning letters to 150 different companies, threatening that they would be added to an international blacklist database for doing business in the settlements of Judea and Samaria. In the letter, which was addressed not only to companies from Israel but to organizations from all over the world, recipients were asked to disclose the exact nature of their business in the occupied Palestinian territories. The list has not yet been published under threat from the United States and Israel, but Palestinian and pro-Palestinian officials have been urging for the publication of the list since it was started. As for the Green Prince, Mossab Hassan Yousef, he was invited as a surprise speaker by the U.N.H.R.C organization to defend against the slew of attacks against Israel levied by dozens of UNHRC member states. In his short but passionate speech, which visibly angered and shocked Palestinian officials, Yousef called the PA the greatest enemy of the Palestinian people and concluded that if Israel didn't exist, they'd have no one to blame. A top Hamas military operative has just taken part in a delegation to Russia last week, and Israel is not pleased. Military operative Saleh al-Arouri spoke with top Russian officials from the foreign ministry in Moscow, and Israeli officials are now stating that his involvement in any political dealings is unacceptable. Arouri was imprisoned by Israel until 2007 for his involvement in several terror attacks. After his release, he later became the architect for several more attacks, most famously the kidnapping of 3 Israeli teens from a bus stop that sparked the 2014 Gaza war. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov responded, saying he had no idea who Arouri really was when they extended him an official invitation and hosted him as a legitimate guest. He even reportedly instructed his staff to investigate how the invitation was made to Arouri and prevent such an issue from happening in the future. The 50th anniversary of Israeli settlements in the West Bank wasn't the only anniversary Prime Minister Netanyahu went to celebrate last night. The World Zionist Organization also invited him to their event on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem, marking 120 years since the first Zionist Congress was held in Basel, Switzerland in 1897. Included in the event schedule were dance performances, musical performances, video tributes sent in from all over the world, and a speech from Prime Minister Netanyahu himself. Netanyahu said, quote, "Herzl is the modern-day Moses who knew how to lead his people. He had the genius as a statesman to act decisively for the sake of the Jews, and we must be proud of our achievements. Israel is a rising world power," end quote. Indeed, it was in very large part due to Herzl's vision over 100 years ago that the State of Israel exists today. A vision embodied in the now infamous manuscript that Herzl published in 1896, The Jewish State. The book defined what would later become modern-day Zionism and concluded with a message that has rippled throughout the background of modern Jewish history. Im tirtzu az en zo agadah, meaning if you will it, it is no dream. That's all for now. I'm Aaron Porras, and see you later with our main daily broadcast from Israel at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.